Are they canceled because of the virus? Probably better to be safe than sorry in this case. Hopefully nothing will happen, but you never know, right?
I love how Cindy says hi to everyone.
Hey folks, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you. Well, I can.
Cool. I have a new headset, so we will see if that affects the rate of dropouts. Yeah, why? Do they need to get a refund? Okay, let's see. So, EAP coming soon. We're having hopefully our final review of issues tomorrow on that, and barring unforeseen circumstances, we'll be shipping with some close approximation of the build we'll have at that point. Probably will be the build we have at that point. Ptolemy or Euclid, do you want to say anything more about the EAP stuff?
Just that we had a build earlier at the beginning of the week, which we thought might have been the final one, and we did QA, or the QA did turn up a few last things to fix up, but we're very close. Mostly we're just working on different rendering, like particularly alpha values that aren't matching up well with the previous release. Nothing's going to be perfect because it is a completely, a vastly modified chain of shaders. So we're trying to get it as close as possible, and we're just doing our final tweaks.
Alright, thanks. Let's see, other than that, I don't know, a lot of the stuff that's been going on recently is kind of boring infrastructure stuff, like trying to get our release notes generating correctly and that sort of thing. In terms of viewers coming out after EAP, we've got the usual chain of maintenance stuff. We've got the profiles viewer, a couple of active project viewers, and so I think there's a fair number that are pretty close, so you'll probably be seeing a fairly fast release pace once EAP comes out. Got some things that are waiting on EAP. Sure we don't stabilize that any. No, unfortunately, Animesh is farther down the list, but yeah, I'm hoping to get a chance to bang on that at some point. Right now, I'm mostly focused on for development work, I'm mostly focused on Arctan, which is in. Let's see. I've got a fix for an appearance service issue that was messing up testing. So trying to get that tested and deployed. Hopefully we can get that part unstuck pretty soon and get to playing around with rendering cost. Heading out again? Well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think they're going to buy me a new one every week. Maybe we just need to get Lucy a new headset. Alright, so I guess we're mostly open for questions. One thing I wanted to toss out to the crowd here, I've mentioned that once we've got the rendering cost updates in place for Arctan, we're going to be working on UI tools to give people more control over performance-related stuff. So that's being able to see the complexity of objects and avatars in the scene, and also having more controls to do things that might help their performance, like twiddling which avatars are shown as jelly dolls, or other settings like that. So I just wanted to toss out, are there particular features that you guys would find especially relevant for that? Well, Joe, you can automate it some, but I mean, some of this is a judgment call, right? If you've got a few avatars that are, super high performance cost to render, but they're also your best friends, and you want to see every pore on their faces, then you don't necessarily want our system to just decide to sort of visually mute them. So that's the kind of thing where it seems like we need to give people some control over it.
Isn't there just like asset blocking though? Like, can't you just like asset block somebody? I mean, on some viewers, I guess is what I'm more curious about.
Sorry, that was a little soft. Could you repeat that, please?
I was asking, some viewers have the functionality of asset blocking. Is that something that Linden Labs is going to put in their viewer, or is that basically what you're talking about doing, or?
Well, that would be one possible approach. We're trying to make this as sort of approachable as possible. So, not something where somebody has to be an expert user and know how to paste in asset IDs or something like that. How does the asset blocking work in these other viewers?
I know in like viewers like Singularity and Firestorm, they give you the option to just go in and right click and just click like the individual on an asset block already. I mean, that's what I've seen, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not an expert on it, so.
So how do you specify which assets you want to block, and what do they look like if you do that? Do they just completely disappear, or do they show in some other form?
They completely disappear. Like, you can, well, yeah, you can de-render assets, but you can also do it entirely. Like, I could just, like, right-click on you and then just, like, de-render, and it would de-render everything and put you in a blacklist of asset black.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I have a kind of crappy mic. I need to buy a phone, so.
So, we do have some controls already in terms of being able to set the, set a rendering cost threshold. People, avatars above that threshold get shown as jelly dolls. But we could make that finer grained, right? We could let you flag individuals too, and say, well, I don't need to see this person in detail, rather than just setting a bar that everybody above or below gets classified a certain way.
Well, the issue with that, Elizabeth, is how do you essentially classify what is automated and what gets blocked and what doesn't? That's kind of the curious question. Then. If you want to automate something, sure, okay, anybody automate something. How do you know it's the right values that you're automating, that you're blocking? I personally agree that visual blocking should itself, not viewers, discretion essentially. But that's, matter of opinion, I guess.
Yeah, I don't see how you can get a good behavior with a fully automated system. I mean, if I was designing a virtual world from scratch, I could set some thresholds for what's a reasonable complexity for avatars and objects, and not display stuff above that threshold, or throttle it way back by showing it as a jelly doll or an imposter or something, and you'd get a good frame rate, but it wouldn't really work in the context of Second Life as it is today, because so many people have extremely complex content that would just blow out any reasonable limit. So if I just turn on something that says, block everybody who's unreasonable, you're basically going to see an empty world rendered really fast. And I think the vast majority of users would not consider that an improvement, even if they had a good frame rate.
You would have individuals contacting support, wondering why the viewer is deciding to just block anybody. It would be like mass chaos. So that's why I think visual blocking is better. If the user realizes, okay, well, this person is, utilizing, is actually lagging me, or causing a system, drop in frames or whatever, then and just say, hey, I don't want to see this person. I just want to block them, and that's perfectly fine. That gives the user ultimately should have that control, because then it's on the user. It's not on Linden Lab. It's not a PR nightmare for Linden Lab. So
yeah,
that's just speaking. I mean, not to speak on the lab's behalf or anything, but essentially, I could see that being something of a nightmare.
Yeah, I think anything where it's completely automatic and we just suddenly stop showing a lot of things we used to show would probably be a non-starter. But we could have user-based controls that are easier to find and easier to use than the ones we have today. I think that would be an achievable objective. Some work. Yeah, Polysale, I think that doing automatic optimization of content, makes a lot of sense as a long-term goal. It's just not something that we can tackle in sort of the first stage of the Arctan project. That's what we're talking about now. I do hope we'll get some time to tackle that in a subsequent pass.
Well, I mean, considering like the automated idea, I mean, there is ways you could technically do it, but then that would also require, essentially banning or removing server side. Essentially, you would be asking, server side to say, hey, okay, well, this is a limit, and users would then, when they're building objects or making avatars or whatever, and have to kind of follow that limit. I know Linden Lab likes to use as their high quality object LOD. too. That's the standard. I know a lot of users don't follow that because it also depends on the user's computer too, because machines that sometimes are not seeing what should be seen in the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some people can get decent performance with content, but we also have a substantial fraction of folks fairly rudimentary systems that can't cope with that sort of thing. We'd like them to have the option of having a less slideshowy experience.
I mean, I know some content creators, like, their computers are just, like, outdated or just are not running, very compatible with Second Life. So then, they're running on, minimum settings at best, or even medium settings, trying to get the best viewable option for their object that they're creating or their content that they're creating. And they go and set the LOD so high that now, well, if you don't have it set to that LOD, well, you're not going to see that object. So, I mean, that's kind of the issue is, how do you tackle that? And I can see that's an issue. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, probably so. I'm not questioning the premise that we should make things as automated as we can. I think there's not a lot we can do in a fully automated. It's gonna bobber too many expecting to be seeing.
You're cutting out really bad, Vir. I kind of missed that whole paragraph.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Polysil, I was just saying that I don't think we can have something that's fully automatic and always on by default. That would be the ultimate in terms of ease of use, right? People don't have to understand anything to enable it, but it's going to trash expected behavior for a lot of people who think that they should be seeing all the stuff that's getting moved or downgraded.
And personally, I think the Jelly Doll system kind of fixes that, at least in terms of avatars. I guess, I mean, if it was to be automated, I mean, I guess you could do like a jelly type object type way of doing it as well, like a jelly object. But then again, doing that kind of says to users, well, kind of creates again that PR nightmare for Linden Lab, and it's like, well, do we want to do that, or do we want to allow users to kind of control that and help users instead understand what the cost of creating objects with higher LOD, higher cost renderings, or however you want to put it. I guess helping users understand it is a better way of going about it than, essentially, telling users, oh, well, if you use a certain amount of LOD or cost rendering, then you're essentially not going to be able to be like, well, why can't I see that object? I want to see that object. Kind of like it's kind of like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, you know?
Yes. So yeah, I'm not at all against the idea of trying to make things as automatic as possible, and I guess the extreme case of that is you've got a big red "Go Faster" button in the corner of the screen, and people can click it, and then it makes things disappear. But if they don't like what it did, they can click it again to make it stop, or something like that. So I'm not at all against the idea of trying to come up with ways to make the experience as simple as possible for the people who are trying to use it. It's just a question of the trade-offs between what people expect and what is going to give them the fastest frame rate on their scene. Yeah, and we're certainly not looking to stop anyone from running, highest quality 2 frames per second if that's what they really want to do. It's just the main concern is people who wind up in that state by default just because they're in a busy region and they don't have the world's greatest machine, and then it's not clear to them what they can do about it.
Actually, kind of talking about that, I've been in regions where, like, I'll give you an example, like clubs, for instance. They're like the worst place to go for people who have like machines that are just not capable of running SL. And then people blame Second Life. They say, oh, well, it's Linden Lab. It's Second Life. So not Second Life having issues, because if you look at the region's frames per second, the region is performing just fine. 44 to 45 frames per second is pretty good. So, I mean, and that's a normal rate for a region. Not the region, and here, and then that too. So it's again, it's a situation of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, and there may not be any perfect solution. We're just trying to make things better than they are now.
Right, and that's kind of why I suggested that, just having that asset blocker would be a better way of doing it, and then just kind of providing documentation where users read through that and they can use for them, and, content creation. Somebody on an older machine, I guess the idea that I just kind of thought in my head too was, if the viewer detects, let's say, for instance, and I don't know if this is something that the lab might do, but if the viewer detects that a user is using the system, maybe the viewer could link them to ways that they could do better performance or help their performance in a more friendlier fashion. I mean, is that something that Linden Lab could possibly do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. We could be making things more adaptive to the particular circumstances, because we know how fast people are getting, what kind of frame rate they're getting. We know what kind of hardware they have, at least broadly. So we could use that kind of information to provide more sort of customized guidance rather than just kind of dumping everybody into the same experience and hoping they can sort it out.
Right. I mean, because I know, like, just having the idea of, just helping that user understand the cost of, like, let's say, using an older PC that's maybe from 2008, 2009, 2010, I mean, that's probably going to cost them. They're not going to see the type of frames that, oh well, I want to see what's on the Second Life website and all these photos that are on the Second Life website. Can't go into.
One of the problems right now is that for the quality and speed, it's just a slider, but you really don't have a visual preview of what these settings mean. And so you sort of have to play around with some stuff and see what changes. It's just kind of time consuming. And some people want to optimize definitely for quality, some people definitely want to optimize for speed, but there's not really a way to sort of see what the impact is until you actually try it and you run around and it's like, oh, this is hitting my frame rate too low, I need to drop down my settings.
Yeah, I mean, clearly one problem is that we have way too many controls and they're pretty much undiscoverable. There's dozens of things that you can tweak by going into the preferences or by setting individual debug settings, and it's not at all reasonable to expect that our typical resident is going to be dealing with that stuff. Find it. Some people enjoy being power users. They like knowing about dozens of options. And to some extent, we don't really want to discourage them, but we don't want to make that the sort of mandatory experience that everybody has to have either.
Having maybe a threshold for it's like, hey, like Paulie said, that's a really great example there, where normally you keep stuff on high quality because you don't have a lot of avatars, and then you warp into a region, there's tons of avatars there, and then your frame rate tanks for like 30 seconds. Oh crap, let me adjust back down. Having some sort of a auto threshold, it's like, hey, I want to hit this target FPS, and then it goes below that, okay, start doing the temporal.
That might imply that we should have some throttling on kind of loading too, that we only kind of load new geometry or new textures at a speed that we can kind of keep up with, rather than just getting completely bogged down in it.
Oh, that long? Probably still 15 minutes? Wow.
Well, that's subjective to hardware and network as well. That's not just that's not just the region or Second Life in general. That's at what rate the user's CPU and GPU, whether that's onboard, integrated, or dedicated graphics, is capable of handling that. Like, I know if I'm going to go in a region that's busy, I know to expect to just wait a few extra. You know what? It is. I know I don't have the most powerful machine in the world, but I also built my computer, and I built it for a reasonable $500. I knew that wasn't going to be, a powerhouse machine, but I also knew that I would get at least out of this going into it, but at least I would get something that's usable. Nothing.
Sounds like maybe there's some opportunity for when we do a teleport to maybe start preloading those assets a little sooner than maybe later. I don't know. I'll have to look at talk with Ryder and get some more feedback to see when exactly some of those assets are getting loaded.
That's actually not a bad idea. But then how do you determine that, I guess, is the question. How do you determine, like, the assets? I mean, I guess the system itself could just know, okay, well, let's say there's 57 people on a region. Okay, well, it's going to take a little bit longer for that, so sure, I guess, predetermine it. But I don't know how well that would work for some users, because that could also cause bottlenecking on their own network side. I'm not saying server side, but I'm saying more, I guess my worry is, would it cause bottlenecking on the user side?
It's definitely complicated. It's both server and client side, right? It's not just one. You just can't do it on the client. The client needs to work in tandem with the server. And yeah, you're right. If you warp in and all the server just starts preloading all this information and the user doesn't want that, it's like the server needs to know about that as well. Otherwise, it's just all this extra work and it's just thrown away. Then the client throws away at the edge. So they have to work
People
hand in hand.
they don't all have the same bottleneck either, right? You know, we've been talking about this primarily in terms of graphic complexity and, you know, GPUs, but some people are more CPU bound, and some people, you know, have crummy network connections, and you know, the right thing to do in those cases isn't necessarily going to be the same.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Okay, well, I just wanted to toss this out as a topic for discussion, but we're not restricted to it. If folks want to talk about other things, they have other questions or whatever, we can chat about those too.
Well, I guess my next question, this is just more GPU related. Is there a way that like LL in general can determine what is the best use GPU-wise for a user's system? Like, because I know like when I log in using the default Linden Lab viewer, everything just texture trashes because it's set at 512. My system is like, okay, like that's not even enough to render the world. I guess I'm just curious, you know, GPU-wise, is there a way for the viewer to kind of detect better, or like at least VRAM usage?
So is the question how much VRAM you need, or what?
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of people that have kind of different debates on what is acceptable for like GPU usage. So I know like Firestorm, for instance, they have a slider that goes up to 2048. I know like Singularity and other viewers ask that. But I guess the question is kind of confused. I'm a little confused. What is the right usage for someone's system? And I'm sure other users are probably looking at that slider and are just like, when they use a third-party viewer or even, you know, the Linden viewer, and they're just like, okay, like, you know, what's up here, you know? I guess the question is, what is the acceptable amount of VRAM that should be held? And I guess how do we tackle that for the user so the user can kind of under.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have great guidance on that. We're in the process of trying to get our minimum system requirements updated, which hasn't been updated for several years now. But it would be nice to have you know, a little more guidance in terms of, you know, what's likely to give you a good experience in most contexts, and we probably don't have, you know, great information about that right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, we definitely need to look at the VRAM requirements. Like I said, Cube mentions, yeah, some of these graphic cards definitely they're starting to get up to 4 gigabytes, 6 gigabytes, and even 8 gigabytes of VRAM for textures and stuff. So we want to revisit that at some point.
I mean, I know, like, I guess for my system, you know, between 2 and 4 has been pretty comfortable. You know, but I know the Linden viewer just doesn't give that option. It's just like 512 is your limit, and that's that, you know. So that's kind of what raises the question, at least on my end. I don't know if that's, I know some other users are kind of curious about it in general. They're just kind of confused.
Yeah, if we still have the 512 limit, that's probably pretty out of date. I actually thought we had a Jira to update that.
Yeah, it's just, I
That
guess.
wasn't part of EAP, was it? Do you guys
No,
happen to remember?
I remember when I I asked about it a few months ago, but no, I don't think it was part of EAP at all. Dan, do you know?
I don't offhand. I'm just looking around.
EAP would be a good sort of checkpoint or milestone to look into that, I guess, or would have been.
Yeah, except we've already got enough stuff in EAP.
The rendering system is intertwined and complicated is a bit of an understatement, but yeah.
We do have a Jira about increasing the memory cap for graphics, but that hasn't been moved on yet.
Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. That actually sounds very good. I guess my next question is there, I know that Evie announced that you guys were getting rid of Sensar, but I guess my question is, before you guys get rid of it, that came Sensar that you guys implement in the SL platform works that would essentially benefit the SL users, just in terms of like either rendering or server-side things, just things that might actually help the user better. I guess that's kind of my question is, you know, I'm not being specific on issues or things, but I guess I'm just more curious if there was things like maybe you guys learned from Sensar that might actually be beneficial to SL that you could at least bring over to Second Life that would be at least compatible or be something that would benefit you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a good question. I can't comment on Sansar at all. I'm not. It's obviously not what I've been working on, but certainly there's been a ton of good work done in that project, and there's probably aspects of it that it would be nice to be able to capture. Usually that's not a trivial undertaking if you've got code bases that have been kind of going off doing their own thing for several years. You may or may not be able to really reuse pieces of it all easily, but it's a question to ask, and it's
Well, I mean, I don't mean like necessarily take directly from Sensar, but I mean, I guess like just different ideas that you could possibly build off of, or even just kind of take a basis of that idea. You know what I mean? And just kind of be like, oh, well, this worked for us over in Sensar. Maybe might benefit the application or rendering issue, network side related to that might work better for Second Life. I just didn't know if the last 3 years maybe Linden Lab kind of learned something basis of.
yeah, no, I see what you mean.
So that I guess that's what I was more curious of, and I know you guys don't specifically work on that. I guess it's a good question, kind of thought about.
Have you worked with or on Sansar? Do you have things you particularly like from the platform?
I mean, I've used the platform. I didn't really care much for it because I didn't really have a VR headset, so for me it wasn't as enjoyable. I mean, I know you don't need a VR headset to use it, but I guess the experience is just better in VR. But again, just I've seen some of the things that were possible, and it kind of made me curious, like because there's just so many things that that were right about Sensar that seemed pretty good. At least, yeah, like colors and textures were really nice. Things loaded up very quickly. They weren't slow. And that was nice, but I guess just my experience differs from others, and everyone's experience is going to be. But I mean, there was a lot of things. It seemed like content creation was, I guess it seemed like things looked a little bit nicer over there versus like on Second Life in some terms. Like I guess just. And I know that's probably just because, Second Life is an older platform, obviously. But, I mean, like Elizabeth just said, things did look a lot nicer over there. So I didn't know if maybe there was, like, again, just something that Linden Lab may have learned from that and utilize that in the SL platform. Like an idea,
Yeah, yeah. No, I think there are some ideas we have, floating around as possible future improvements, including some things that come from Sansar. But obviously we've got a lot of those in the pipeline at any time, so it's hard to say, what's going to come next.
The other thing is too, it's just it would to me it just would feel like kind of a waste, get rid of the platform and then not take anything from it either, like because I mean there was a lot of good aspects about the platform that actually did work, so or at least seemed to work, at least on my end from what I saw. So I just to me it would seem like just kind of a waste not taking from it and build on that idea in the second life. So.
Yep, no, I agree.
I don't think it was so much that, but I think it was people kind of felt that C.F.R kind of coming from people that were just in the communities, in different communities. I've talked to some people and they kind of felt that, Linden Lab kind of failed on some aspects. And again, this is nothing against Linden Lab, obviously, because, I mean, there was a lot of good things about C.F.R that was great. And I'm sure Linden Lab had a good reason for is, obviously probably monetary wise and also, improving the user's experience and having something that people will enjoy. And sometimes things work and sometimes things don't, obviously. But I think that the biggest problem I think people had with it was that then there was nothing they could do in the world. Second Life, that was being number two, it felt, I think, just kind of like walked away from Second. And I guess some users just kind of felt hurt by that. And I mean, things happen. It's to no one's fault, obviously. I mean, not everything lasts forever. And that's just the way. That's just business in a sense. But that's kind of where my thought and my gathering of information has led my conclusion to. But I can't speak for. Can't speak for.
Yeah, well, sure, and of course, coming from where we are right now, the question really is, what's the best thing or best things to do going forward for Second Life, and we have a lot of good proposals and suggestions from a lot of different directions, including from Sansar, and just have to try to the best and most feasible options that we have.
I always say life is about learning, right? You're always learning something new every day. So, and I'm sure Eddie and the team at Linden Lab has learned at least something from C.F.R, and I'm sure they're doing what they can to make at least things more, I guess, more enjoyable for users. So, but everything's not perfect either. So, it is what it is. You live and you learn, and every day is a learning experience. So, you know. exactly entirely against moving the Second Life platform to the cloud. And I mean, doing that, I'm sure, is a task in of itself. So, sound like at least has some. I mean, just from what I gathered from it, you know, well, yeah, again, he did admit it in his own way, but, you know, again, that kind of brings me back to my basis of, you know, every day is a learning lesson. You know, everybody learns. You educate the human mind, right? You know, and you learn what works and you learn what doesn't work, and everything was kind of a trial and error type of thing, you know. It's really about, you know, what works and what doesn't, and trial and error, you know.
Yeah. Well, sure, and obviously Second Life has evolved a lot over the years, and some combination of things that were planned ahead of time and things that you know, tried it and it worked out or it didn't. There's some discussion about the cloud uplift. I'm not sure exactly what Ebe said, but I mean what's going on is that we have a substantial effort underway to move our services into the cloud, and you know it does tie up a significant fraction of our available development resources, but it's something we really have to do at this point, and you know, but it's not the only thing we're doing. We do still have developers working on you know, working on new SL development, and it's still going to be an ongoing forward.
Well, I think some people were just kind of confused because they, based on what he was saying, oh, well, this year we're only mainly focused on, you know, just. I don't think he directly said it, but I think it was just more of like a hint towards it, like, hey, you know, we're not really going to work on a lot of features this year, but, you know, instead we're trying to focus on the platform itself. I think a lot of users kind of felt a little bit hurt by that, but coming from a, you know, developmental standpoint and being somebody who behind the scenes, you know, we are human. We have to also have our own lives too, so, you know, so, but, you know, I kind of.
Yeah, we're spinning the hamster wheels as fast as we can, but can't do everything at once.
Right. I mean, you know, and again, things take time, you know, and everything is trial and error too, right? So, you know, you move at the pace that you can. I mean, you know, you can't. I've learned that if you push things too fast, you tend to screw them up, right? So, you know, taking that time to find what works and what doesn't, finding what works,
Yeah.
doesn't work, and that's it's the thing for Second Life and Sensar. Going back to the topic of even Sensar, that was a trial and error, and you know it didn't work out for them in the lab, and that's okay. I mean, you know, at least they're not looking to just kill the project. They're looking to sell it to somebody who will take good care of it, and you know, take good care of its users. And you know, I felt that was the right move, at least in terms of a business standpoint. I mean, because you obviously don't want to hurt the customers that have migrated to that platform or have never even been in Second Life, but were part of Sensar. You know, so I can see both sides of the story in a sense, and understand that people, you know, everybody's going to have their opinion on the matter, you know, but it's really just take your time and you trial and error and try till you get it right. And
Yeah.
that's out, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Thanks for the input, everybody. I think we're about at time for this week's meeting, so we should be around same time next week and chat some more then. I hope we'll have something to announce about EAP at that point.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, alright. Well, talk to everybody later.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Bye!
Take care.